Joining me now on that and some other topics today is the NSC Coordinator for Strategic Communications, John Kirby. John, welcome. Always good to have you with us. Thank you very much for being here.
My pleasure.
You know, this is an interesting situation that has developed with Apple. And I want to start there and get your take on what Apple is doing, because they have restricted, which is what the Chinese government wants, some use of AirDrop ability from iPhone to iPhone, because they're cutting the service down. And this is the way the protesters are communicating with each other. What does the White House, what do you say to Apple about helping the Chinese government to keep their people under control?
Well, look, in general, and we've been clear about this all around the world, we want individual citizens, no matter what government they live under, to be able to communicate freely and openly, transparently and reliably. And we've made that clear with respect to Iran, and we certainly continue to make that clear here with respect to China.
Have you made that clear to Apple?
Apple's a private company, Martha. They have to make decisions, and they have to speak for those decisions. But here at the White House, here in the administration, we want to see that individual citizens, whether they're protesting or not, but in this case, I know that's the context we're talking about, are able to communicate freely and openly.
But why not say something to Apple? Because we were just told the other day that the White House is keeping an eye on Elon Musk and Twitter. So why would you say that from the podium? You didn't say it, but Karine Jean-Pierre said it, and not call Apple out for helping the Chinese government to suppress their own people's ability to communicate?
Again, I think we've been very clear and consistent on this. Certainly publicly, we've been very open about our desires to be able to see citizens communicate. And you know, Apple, if this is a decision that they're making, then they should have to speak to that. But we can't. And we aren't in the business of telling private companies how to execute their initiatives.
Yeah, but Twitter's a private company, too. So why is Twitter getting one treatment and Apple's getting another, is my question.
Well, these are completely two different circumstances. You're talking about the potential. Well, you're talking about the potential for perhaps foreign investment and involvement in the management of Twitter. That's a different issue than what we're talking about here, which is a business decision by Apple with respect to how one of their applications is being utilized.
Certainly, they're getting influenced by a foreign government, and that government is China. And Apple's policies, they've changed policies specifically for China when it comes to what they put on their phones.
Right.
I mean, that seems like something that the White House ought to be able to keep an eye on.
I certainly think that's a fair question to ask Apple and try to make them communicate why they did this.
But I'm asking, has the White House done that? Have you reached out to them as a matter of national security, since we obviously have national security concerns with China, who they seem to be aiding in this process?
Sure. I don't have any communications to speak to specifically with Apple executives. Again, it's a private company. They make these policies, and they should have to answer for that. What we want to see is that citizens are reliably able to communicate, whether it's a time of crisis or not.
Yeah, but I go back to this same thing, because we were just told that the White House will keep an eye on Twitter because they're concerned about the new Twitter 2.0 that Elon Musk is putting in, where he wants more free speech on Twitter. So they're going to keep an eye on Twitter, and yet you're taking a hands-off approach. You say there's been no communication with Tim Cook at Apple about this process in China with the Chinese government?
Martha, I'm not aware that there's been any conversations specifically with Apple on this particular issue. It's a private company. And as for Twitter, again, Martha, these are apples and oranges. We're talking about potential foreign investment issues, and I have nothing to report in terms of any investigations in that regard. But that was the general concern with respect to Mr. Musk's purchase of Twitter. This is a different issue. This is a policy issue inside of Apple.
They both involve foreign governments, I would argue. So, you know, we can circle back around on that. I want to ask you one more question here, and we're going to get to this a little bit later as well. Elon Musk has just come out and said, and by the way, I just want to point out that Elon Musk helped protesters in Iran and in Ukraine by getting Starlink up and working. So he did the absolute opposite of what Tim Cook at Apple is doing right now. But I want to get your attention to this. He says, the obvious reality, as longtime users know, is that Twitter has failed in trust and safety for a very long time and has interfered in elections. Twitter 2.0 will be far more effective, transparent, and even-handed. He's been talking about opening up the communications that existed between entities, perhaps even the U.S. government, perhaps even the White House, and Twitter, about suppressing the Hunter Biden story. Are you concerned at all? Are you aware of any communications between the government and Twitter to say, put a handle on this story, and it was suppressed? We know that Facebook said that there was interaction between some government officials and them about being very cautious about this Hunter Biden story right before the election.
I'm certainly not aware of any conversations or dialogue in that respect, Martha. No.
So, what do you say about the fact that he says that there was interference in the election? Because I know that the president has been very passionate about threats to democracy and freedom in our elections. So if he's saying there's a concern that Twitter has interfered in elections, I would assume that would be a concern of yours and the White House's as well.
Well, certainly we want to make sure that our elections are free and fair and open and transparent, and any threat to that obviously is a concern of ours. I'm not aware of exactly what Mr. Musk is speaking about here. I look forward to getting more information about that so we can better understand what he's alleging here. But obviously we want our elections to be free and fair and open, and we know that social media in general was capitalized on from the Russians in particular in 2016, and they tried it in 2018, and they attempted to do it again in 2020, and they claimed that they were working to try to interfere with our election that we just had, the midterm. So we're always watchful for foreign interference, and certainly social media is a venue through which bad actors can try to do that. But I'm just not familiar enough with what Mr. Musk is talking about here. All
right, no doubt. But you're not suggesting that the Hunter Biden story was Russian disinformation, to be clear.
I'm not suggesting anything with respect to that specific investigation.
Okay, we'll see where it all goes. I know you're short on time, and I have to let you go.